What's up guys, Brad here from Piney Grove. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, Deb, aka Mrs. Piney Grove, and I bought 20 acres 6 years ago that we're turning into our forever homestead. Behind me you'll see I need to do a lot of string trimming. Also around the garden needs some string trimming, the mega shed, all this needs to be mowed, but before I can do that, I have to do maintenance on Deb's zero-turn mower, which she affectionately calls Spunky. Now Spunky is our first zero-turn mower that we've ever owned. We got it last year. Deb absolutely loves it. We've been maintaining it, but it's due for an oil change. So this is Deb's favorite machine on the property, although the Hyson is a close second. We've been keeping the spindles and the casters lubed. The blades are okay for right now, but we do need to do an oil change and check the air filter. We bought this mower used with about 60 hours on it last year, and they had just had Kubota do the complete maintenance. One thing that I thought was odd is there's this little breather here on the air cleaner, and it just lets water out. It's like a one-way check valve. That was actually deteriorated to the point that I had to change it. I didn't buy a new air filter. You always mow in dusty environments, so we're just gonna go ahead and check it, blow it out with what I've got. Get that out of the way and pull out this air filter. This actually has the dual air filter, so it has an inner element inside of this one, but this outer one has a little bit of dust on it. We're just gonna blow this off. Whoever the Kubota dealer was that did the service is actually very much like me. They put the hours right on the end of the filter. This is called an inflator, but it also has a blower function on it. Well, I guess there's more dust than I thought. All right, that was easy, that's all done. We'll put this back on over top of that inner filter. Make sure it's seated. Put that drain to the down position. Get that back on. It's got two arrows right here to line it up. And put this rubber strap back on. All right, air cleaner's all cleaned, ready for another mowing season. The oil filter's right here. It's pretty easy to get to. The oil drain is up underneath, of course. I've got my oil drain pan, and I got a 14mm socket to pull the plug. And I'm gonna pull the dipstick to allow some air to come in for the oil when it comes out. The oil's all drained and I got the drain plug in. Next, we're gonna take off this oil filter, which is in a fairly easy to get to location, and I don't have an oil filter wrench, but it'll be easy to use one here. What I have is a big pair of water pump pliers. They've come in so handy for me out here on the farm, and this is actually an inherited tool from my dad that passed away about 3 months ago, so it's got a little bit additional meaning for me, but I've just found them so useful, especially on oil filters. Usually once you get that first quarter turn, they come off easy. Put a rag here to catch that oil. I've got the pan underneath there, but it's kind of a free fall all the way down to the pan. It shouldn't be too messy. Got a few wrench marks on the filter where I pulled it off, but otherwise it didn't damage it. There was no danger that it was going to puncture it. And it looks like they had it sealed pretty good. I don't see any leakage around it. But we'll get the new filter out over here, and then we'll talk about why I'm changing the oil. It's only been one season in about 30 hours. All the oil is drained from the filter mounting location, but I'm going to take a clean rag and just make sure there's no sand or grit around here where the new filter mates up. And also that helps me detect a leak later on. If I see this wet here, I know that it's new oil. Got the new Kubota filter here, and I'm going to preload it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the reason that I'm changing the oil is for two reasons. One, because I didn't change the oil on the machine, and I'm certain the Kubota dealer did the previous owner a solid and changed the oil. They definitely changed the filter. They put the date on it, but I didn't personally witness it, and that's something that I want to know, is that the oil's been changed in this machine. And also, when I was checking the oil level when we bought it, the oil was actually above the top of the fill level. So it was in an over-service condition. And when I drained it in the drain pan, it definitely had more than the 3.7 quarts. That is the capacity of this machine. So there's a lot of studies out there and a lot of YouTube videos too on an over-serviced oil condition. What happens is the oil level gets too high in the crankcase, and the crankshaft will actually come down and dip the oil. It should be below the bottom of the crankshaft, and it'll cause frothing, which is basically mixing air with the oil, and then maybe the pump will cavitate and you won't have good oil pressure, And there may be some other negative reasons why you don't want to have an over-service condition, but there's a big discrepancy between the top of the service line and how much you overfill it where it could possibly damage your engine. I am not a diesel mechanic. I am not a diesel engineer. I don't know if you actually can have an engine that's damaged by over-servicing, but I figure that Kubota says 3.7 quarts. So that's what I should put in it, and I don't want it to be above the fill line. You saw me pour some oil inside of the oil filter, and that's what's called preloading the oil filter. And the reason I do that is upon startup, if there's no oil in here, it's going to take a second, and it could be a millisecond, but it's going to have a certain amount of time where the oil pump is pumping, and it's not going to have any oil because there's air inside here. This filter goes in the horizontal position so you can only put so much oil in it before it'll start coming out when you're installing it. I've preloaded it. That has put at least some oil in the cardboard filter around there. I won't actually be able to fill it all the way. And I just think that's a good practice. There's a lot of studies out there that say it doesn't make a difference, but I figure it can't hurt. I pretty much talk about this every time I change oil, and I got an interesting comment the other day where someone said, never do that because you're taking oil and putting it here in the center, and that is the unfiltered side. And he is exactly correct. The oil comes in through these little holes here, gets filtered, and then the clean oil comes out through this center part right here and then goes to your engine. Well, if you take oil from an oil can, you know, a new oil, and put in the center, what he's saying is this is unfiltered oil. And he's right, it's unfiltered oil you're putting in there, and that goes directly to your bearings. But I guess I'm counting on the fact that Kubota or whoever I'm buying oil from is giving me clean oil, so putting clean oil in the center isn't harming the engine. But that's an interesting concept. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about all that? But for now, we're going to go install this filter, and then once we get it installed, we'll put the date on it. I'm going to double check that the seating surface there is still clean with a clean rag. I've already oiled my gasket right here, and that just allows the gasket to slide against the mating surface so that it seals properly. If you use a dry seal against dry metal, it may not slide and allow you to tighten up the filter properly. So we'll just spin it until it contacts, and then we'll do about 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. You'll know when it's tight. You never need to put a wrench on a oil filter when you're tightening it. Well, before we fill it with oil, I'm going to put the date on here, and then we'll know easily when it was last changed. So far, I've found this servicing to be very easy. This is the oil fill on top of the crankcase or the top of the engine. It's real easy to get to. Make sure that's all cleaned off, and also use a funnel so I don't spill oil on the engine. I'm not sponsored by Kubota. Everything that's orange on Piney Grove we bought. I don't think we bought any of our Kubota equipment new. I think it's all been used. But we found that they're easy to service. That's a big thing when you're looking to buy something, is how easy can you service it yourself so you don't have to take it in the dealer. We're going to put about 3 quarts of oil in there and then check it. We don't want to overfill it. One thing I do with my oil is when I open it, I put the date on it that I opened it. I got about 2 quarts in this jug here, so I'm going to see if that registers on the dipstick at all. It's showing up on the dipstick, but I'm going to let the oil settle because it was showing it above the fill line, and there's no way it's above the fill line with only 2 quarts of oil when the capacity is 3.7 quarts. I started it up and let it run for just, I don't know, 1/2 minute or so, not very long at all. Just make sure that I had enough oil in it. And now we'll recheck it, and it looks like it's right on. It's right at the full level. I think it's ready to start cutting grass. And I'm gonna run it a little bit more and then shut it off and let it drain down. And that'll be my final check, and then we can get to mowing. She's all serviced up. Let's see how she cuts. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble, guys. Miss Piney Grove heard Spunky start up, and she's over here giving me the evil eye telling me, what am I doing cutting her grass? What's wrong, babe?
That's wrong on so many levels. I told him I was gonna mow.
She did say she wanted to mow, but I had to show you guys that the mower still ran after I changed the oil. Cut's good and it's ready for Miss Piney Grove to finish mowing the rest of the property. But that's going to do it for today's video. We sure appreciate you watching. We appreciate your support as always. And until next time, remember, life's short, tractor hard.